Hey guys, what's up? So I took Alan Turing's name in vain in a nightclub in Manchester on Saturday, and now I've been cursed to walk the earth as a series of ones and zeros. So call me with you today. But I have prepared this short video presentation, which is actually the first video that I've ever made. So it's taken me like a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So please bear with. I know this will be like extremely, yeah, I mean it's going to be less interesting than if I was there. But like I hope it gives you like a nice little overview, and yeah, like we're gonna have fun together. We're gonna try and keep it short. Like I hope you can understand everything that I'm saying. And you've like read the text anyway, right? So you're all good. Okay. So let's begin. So Daniel Miller, who we're going to be talking about today, who's written Social Media in an English Village or How to Keep People at Just the Right Distance, is an anthropologist at UCL. And did I say he was born in 1954? Yeah, he was born in 1954. Did most of his undergraduate work at Cambridge. Concentrates on social media for the most part since the year 2000, and leads the digital anthropology master's program at UCL, my home university. Ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm it is just fine. Don't do a master's there, it's very expensive and there's nowhere to go to the toilet. So Social Media in an English Village is an ethnographic account of the way people use social media in what Miller considers to be like a classic, or like, I guess not typical English community, but like describes like a very particular, like typical type of Englishness. My chair's creaking. I hope that you can't hear it creak. So it's suburban, so like got like a countryside vibe, but within very easy reach of London. Small. It's like 11,000 people, pretty affluent, and 98% white. Highglade and Leaglade, so they're like two villages that join in together in like a valley or something. He comments that many of his undergraduate students at UCL come from places like very much like the Glades, which I think needs to be taken with like a little bit of a pinch of salt, because it justifies his decision, for him choosing somewhere like that, because it repudiates anthropology's idea of us studying them. But I think, number one, 48% of UCL students are not from the UK. And number two, judging from my personal experience, people from somewhere like the Glades would be on the poorer end of the UCL socioeconomic scale. So I really think that, the crisis in like anthropology, anthropology's privilege problem is not necessarily coming from the Glades, but rather coming from like international schools in Singapore. But anyway, enough about us. So yes, also the proportion of the UK population, which is BAME, which is like an English term to kind of denote black and minority ethnic, UK wide, is 12.9%. So much more than what is in the Glades. So much more, much higher than the kind of village community Daniel Miller is talking about, and also like not necessarily just concentrated in big cities. Like there's a lot of smaller communities which are also have quite a high proportion of people from ethnic minorities. So I think it's like one variant of Englishness, which obviously I'm picking up because like I'm English, and I feel like I need to say it, but like to you guys I'm sure like it probably like doesn't matter, like quite as much, because like you guys are in Germany and I am just wandering the cloud. So I think he went to Cambridge, like he's a posh guy, and like a lot of the things, not a lot of the things, like some of the things that he says, like I think we do have to like, it's coming from like a very like middle class North London viewpoint, such as his he makes a kind of association with social housing and poverty, which I think and he also writes the house prices in the chapter of how much all the houses are in the village, which I also think is a very English thing to do because we're obsessed with house prices. But yeah, a lot of those assumptions are very English assumptions, to make. So I think it's also important to kind of point those out, and I guess highlights the difficulties in terms of ethnographizing yourself. But yes, so it's a variant of Englishness. Anyway, on to the meat and potatoes of this whole affair, which is the ethnography. So basically, his reason for doing the ethnography was that he wanted to explore whether claims surrounding the study of social media, such as that the platforms that we post on are paramount, that our virtual lives are totally divorced from our spatial context, and that they individualise us and give us greater autonomy, could be verified in the field. To do this, he spent 18 months commuting back and forth from the Glades. He didn't see a point living there because there were so many people living there who just commuted to London, came back and went to bed, and didn't really engage with village life, didn't join the sports club, didn't make jam with the Women's Institute, or what people in villages do. What Miller found was, in many ways, social media gives us less autonomy and makes us more embedded in local social relations. The central claim of his book, and I'm quoting here, ladies and gentlemen, is that precisely because social media exists largely in the content of what people post, it is always local. Just as there will be Chinese or Trinidadian social media, the most important element in understanding social media in an English village is to appreciate how English it is. So, English people use social media to communicate with their friends and share memes about their Englishness, but they also use it to keep people at a distance in a way Miller terms the Goldilocks strategy. I think, I guess the type of content that you post, and not just oh, I've put that person on private, but sometimes you share a meme and it's got an intended audience, and Auntie Beryl in Sheffield's just not gonna get it, and that also keeps a certain kind of person out of your social circle and other types of people within the social circle. My stepmom's just followed me on Instagram, and to be honest, I'm feeling pretty worried about it. He also tries to include people who aren't necessarily the typical people who will be included in ethnographies. So people who do make the jam, do go to the village hall, and he tried knocking on doors. But he had some people cancel 5 times before they actually said, no, I don't want to be in it. And that's a very stereotypically English thing. But he did get a lot of contacts going down that route. So he argues that the social science focus, or social science wide focus on platforms in and of themselves, is harmful. Because it obscures why people use social media as a whole. They're merely the vehicle by which social media travels, as Miller says. People do use different platforms to post different types of things, but the differences between them are often exploited to carry a different tone to a similar audience. For example, I never post funny signs on my Facebook profile, but I do it all the time on my Insta stories. Because I think it's hilarious. Oh my god, I saw one in Hamburg Airport the other day. I'll have to tell you next week. But often the difference between the social media platforms, the way that they work, is exploited as part of the message. The medium is the message, right? He kind of sees social media in a way as moving us back to old patterns, towards older patterns where social networks were in the foreground, and they were pretty much everything, rather than in the kind of background of our lives. As LinkedIn's tagline says, it's all about who you know, not what you know. and like that's absolutely fine to say in 2019 apparently. He also sees the kind of, I think he was writing in like 2016, 2017, but he's kind of regretting the disappearance of the use of the word social networking site, because he feels like social media obscures a lot of what social media actually does, in that a lot of the communication that we actually do on social media is phatic, as in like it's not really media. And second of all, he's also kind of saying that social media is kind of like where we live our daily lives, to a certain way. Like it's kind of like where reality happens. So yeah, it's like social media is kind of like a little bit problematic in a way. Also because many platforms also offer a combination of like, yeah, the like social media section, but also like dyadic and group messaging. Like he's kind of saying that it's a bit difficult because like WhatsApp, for example, like yeah, you have the broadcast, but it's actually like mostly messaging and like group messaging. I personally hate WhatsApp, but I have to use it. I also hate voice messages, but I kind of love to hate them. So as an anthropologist, he also thinks that this phrase is useful because it gets to something about the way anthropologists study people in relation to each other. So like, yes, in short, what Daniel Miller's basically saying is that 1, the study of social media needs to be done in a more geographically and contextually rich fashion. 2, we need to question our assumptions about social media being freeing or individualizing necessarily, because this is not how many people use it / experience it. 3, we need to be careful about taking the platform as king. 4, personally, I found this way of looking at social media quite refreshing. Did you guys think? Have a good discussion. Bye. Hello. It's several hours later from the time I originally recorded this audio. But just listening back to myself earlier, I think it's also important to add that one of his key ethnographic methods was like obviously following them on social media, because like no one wanted to talk to him. But yes. Hello. It's several hours later from the time I originally recorded this audio. But just listening back to myself earlier, I think it's also important to add that one of his key ethnographic methods was like obviously following them on social media, because like no one wanted to talk to him. But yes.